as the daughter of a World War II veteran, this work is personal to me. I take serious our nation's obligation to our service members, veterans, and their families. We have to make sure we are meeting their needs and keeping our promises to them. I have worked to do that every day since I've been here in the Senate. It was my top priority when I led the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee, and it is my #1 focus as chair of this subcommittee as well. I'm very glad to have Senator Boozman as my partner across the aisle. We have worked closely together on the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee, and I know he takes this responsibility seriously as well. I look forward to working with you on this subcommittee and with all of our colleagues on both sides of the aisle, starting by making sure we continue our progress on returning to regular order, because we cannot keep up with our competitors like China if we let critical investments like military construction fall behind or fall into uncertainty due to partisan fighting. Today's hearing is an important opportunity to assess what our nation needs to stay ready, to support our service members, and keep our families safe. And I'm pleased to see President Biden showing he takes this seriously by proposing significant investments to improve the quality of life for service members and their families, modernize maintenance and training facilities, and make military installations more resilient against growing threats like climate disasters. This budget request increases military construction by more than a third compared to last year's request, continuing a trend of increases that is especially critical after roughly a decade of decline and amid rising construction costs and growing needs. After all, our ships and our submarines, our aircrafts, and more are only as good as the infrastructure they rely on, and they are only as well supported as the troops who actually operate them. That's why the investments in this budget are so important. For example, the billions in funding proposed in this budget to modernize our public shipyards. Back home in my state of Washington, the Puget Sound Naval Shipyard is a key naval asset, and I'm pleased to see that this budget includes funding for electrical infrastructure to help it prevent unexpected power outages. I also expect to hear more about the Navy's plans for progress on the multi-mission dry dock at Puget Sound Naval Shipyard, including construction plans to address the unique threats posed to the shipyard by the potential for earthquakes in that area. And of course, earthquakes aren't the only natural disaster we have to be prepared for. Climate change is an urgent national security threat, and if we want to keep our nation ready for anything, we have to make sure our bases are resilient in the face of climate disasters, which is why the funding requested for 30 projects focused on improving energy and water resilience at our military installations is such an important investment. The department should also continue developing projects that enhance installation resilience in the face of severe weather. This budget also includes key funding to strengthen our alliances and partnerships around the world by supporting NATO infrastructure projects, and funding to address PFAS and other toxins at former installations that could put our communities in harm's way, an issue that must be dealt with on active installations. And last but not least, there are the investments here focused on improving the quality of life for our service members and their families, like good child care and schools for troops for our kids, or schools for our troops' kids, or good housing or dining options. Those investments really improve our recruiting, our retention, and our overall readiness. And what's more, they're what our troops deserve. They're part of what we owe them for the sacrifices that they make. So I'm glad this budget request includes a boost in funding for troop housing for individuals and families alike, including $100 million for a barracks project at Joint Base Lewis McChord in Washington State. There is a significant housing gap at the base, and I look forward to hearing more about how this project will help close that. I'm also interested to hear more about the Air Force's plans to strengthen family housing projects as well. It is important to me that we are maintaining the housing stock we have and not letting the houses military families are living in right now fall into disrepair. I'm also pleased to see this request includes funding for 5 new child development centers. We have a child care crisis in this country, and too many parents cannot find high-quality, affordable child care options that work for them. Staffing shortages, worsened by the low pay in that sector and high demand, have made it very hard for families across the country to get child care, and troops are no exception. This crisis is keeping parents out of the workforce and holding them back from pursuing their careers, including careers in the military. I've been pushing very hard to pass my Child Care for Working Families Act because we do need in this country bold change and bold investments to end that crisis nationwide. And as that effort continues, I'm glad to see President Biden understands how important child care is to our troops and to keeping our nation strong and ready for anything. Because at the end of the day, we could have the best equipment, ships, aircrafts, tanks, you name it, but none of it will do any good without the brave and talented men and women who work to keep our country safe. So I look forward today to hearing more from our witnesses about how the investments in this budget strengthen our country and working with my colleagues in a timely manner to pass a funding bill that lives up to our obligation to support our troops and their families and protect our nation.